The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
It's time to get it on. This is called Mission Minded because we keep your mind on your mission on your mind. And a man who knows that so well is Michael Coleman. He's now with the Montgomery Food Bank. He's been down there for over 30 days. Formerly, of course, of the Jimmy Hill Mission. Wherever he goes, it's a fantastic organization. We love that. We follow this man, and he's doing wonderful. Michael, how are you doing this afternoon? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I kind of thought about, I wouldn't say that I am I'm just academically a nonprofit expert, but yes. I think what I try to do is I try to take things that are the most common questions and give them practical applications so people can navigate that space. You might have a very technical question that I might have to refer you out that I'm not sure of, but I think the routine things and routine challenges that leaders and that they have with board directors and running organizations and casting vision and all those kind of things, hopefully I will be able to be a help to our audience.
Is there kind of a template for a non-for-profit? You talked about the board members and, of course, the executive board and all those things. And for the most part, if you're successful in one area, can you be successful in pretty much any charity, any non-for-profit?
Yeah, so there's some things that are very common, but even the things that are very common to those in the nonprofit world can be vastly different. And the easiest explanation is just to look at your board of directors. So the board of directors, it's required by RS regulations. You have at least 3 board of directors. Most have anywhere from 5 to 30. And you determine how the board's going to be run internally. But it's lots of times it's where those boundaries are, because people will say, it's the executive director or the CEO that runs the nonprofit day to day. And the role of the board is they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the mission is being carried out, to make sure that the money is being effectively managed, but they don't get involved in the day to day. Well, what's so interesting is depending on who you talk to, you'll get a different definition for what day-to-day is. So where's that boundary? You'll have some boards that are so hands-off that the director is just practically on his own, and some people may like that. Mm-hmm. But then you have some that micromanage, and what they define as day-to-day is vastly different. And so it's the same grouping, it's the same structure, but the environment and your experience could be vastly different based on the people involved in that.
Do you have people, and I don't want you to be specific here, obviously, but you've been around a lot of people that they want to be part of a bigger cause, but they do have egos, and you always mentioned you want to bring more members that obviously have influence because they're going to be contributing to your cause as well. But I mean, board members with hero complexes, people that say, listen, this is the way it should be done, and maybe they're kind of sticks in the mud when it comes to wanting to move things forward. Do you have those issues?
Yeah, so the way I kind of look at it is, we all know humanity, yeah, and humanity is messed up, and we've all been shaped by our own experiences. So, you never know. Are you going to get a boss that's a micromanager? Are you going to get a boss that's on an ego trip, a power trip? Are you going to get somebody who just doesn't communicate effectively? Well, imagine, you get, 15 to 20 board members, you're going to get across the spectrum. And so what you end up dealing with are the board officers more than anything. So as me as a CEO, I'm going to be dealing with the board chair. And so one year I may have a board chair that's very warm and friendly, and we may go eat lunch a lot. And so we have this relationship and maybe an open forum to talk about whatever I want to. And maybe he's like, Michael, you just do your thing and I'm here, when you need me. And then you may have somebody that comes in that's all business, that doesn't want a personal relationship, that feels like that muddies the water. So directors, it's not even like, well, this is our organizational culture, because the board can be drastically changed from year to year depending on who's brought on.
Yeah, it's interesting. Michael Coleman here, Mission Minded. The show runs every single week, and of course, so we're going to start running it 5 days a week starting next week. So we're super excited about that. Just download the TKR app, TKR through Android, Apple. You can listen to great classic rock and roll and Mission Minded every single week, and then also, of course, go to wherever you get your podcast. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. If you have any email questions, it's if I'm starting a business. I can go through a process where I can hire who I want to work around. And if they see the mission of say I'm selling widgets, and I know I'm handpicking 7 or 8 different people because I'm going through their resumes, and I can say, no, you don't fit here. I don't. I think it's just a little different, right, for a non-for-profit, is it not? I mean, we talked about if you want to be on a particular board bad enough and you think you can make improvements, you could certainly reach out to those individuals. But I could see where, because you don't really control the board kind of controls you, right, as a CEO?
There's no doubt that the board, now I don't answer to any single board member. No single board member can fire me or do anything like that. But collectively, the board of directors has the authority to hire and fire the CEO or the director. And so, it just behooves any organization that all the leadership find common ground and find ways to work. I'll tell you the most interesting dynamic that I've seen is if you don't have a good board onboarding process for your board of directors, you'll find yourself in this kind of position. So let's say you want to bring somebody onto the board, and for whatever reason, let's say maybe it's you want to focus on more diversity, or maybe you want to focus on more community engagement. So some people look at, hey, we want to have somebody who's a lawyer, somebody who's a doctor, somebody who's whatever, and so you may be focused that way. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but you bring somebody in, and all of a sudden that person may not have ever toured your site. Maybe that's not part of the onboarding process. So. Or somebody doesn't know anything. They've not read your personal handbook. They don't know they know your mission statement, but they've never seen it practically applied on the ground. And then that person all of a sudden gets added to the board of directors. Now they're in charge of making decisions that affect your day-to-day operations and how you carry out your mission, yet they know nothing about our mission. So as a board member, when you're in the process of recruiting for board members, typically we get people who have affluence or influence. They can either write the big check or they can open up doors. And sometimes you'll have people who have specialty ability, CPA or something specific to your mission, some specialty expert advisor role that they can fill. And all that's very, very important. But when they go to on board, I always think you should have to before you can become a board member, you should have to tour the facilities. You should have to talk with clients. You should have to ask financial questions. You should have to do all that and understand what's being asked of you, because if you don't, lots of times people are like, oh, I really don't have the time for this. And if you don't have time to come to a board meeting, you really don't have time to come on site and be able to do all the tasks that's required of you and all the things that's required of you, or at least have a working knowledge. And so I'm telling you, it's so common. You have a board of directors. If I went up to them and said, give me a rundown on what you do and what your organization does. And the truth of the matter is they could probably do it in about 10 seconds because they only know about 10 seconds worth of what we do.
Yeah.
I saw it all the time in homeless missions. It's like, what do you do? Oh, we help homeless people. Okay, well, tell me about your program. Well, let me let you call Michael. He could tell you, because they really don't know. And that's fine, except these are the same people that I'm answering to. They're supposed to be holding me accountable to run an effective homeless shelter. And so it's just the nature of the beast. We're fighting our calendars and our social, just all that kind of stuff. It's just such a tough challenge. I just don't think we do collectively in the nonprofit world. We just don't do a good job of onboarding our potential candidates to serve on the board. We're scared to put out clear expectations for fear that they will back away. And I'm like, it's much better to tell them, everything up front and have them back out than to be chasing this board member. Hey, you haven't been to 3 board meetings in a row. Where you at? Or,
Yeah, no doubt.
You end up chasing them like you do sales clients. It's better to put all that information up front and see whether it fits what they're doing than you're just constantly chasing them afterwards trying to make a sale.
Well, and having worked for the Bright House Foundation, it was just my ex and I for a long period of time. And then we got to the point where we started bringing in some pretty good money and people started realizing who we were and what we were doing. And that's when we had to get board members. And you don't get board members just because you have to have board members. You get board members to do their job is what you do. Some people go, well, we got to get 3 or 4 people to keep us honest because I got news for you. There's a lot, and we see it almost every single day. There are non-for-profits out there where they're raising a lot of money, but they're also going out and having nice dinners because they deserve it, because they just had a great charity event.
Well, I tell you, years ago, I had a guy who came to me who said, Michael, I really am interested in what you're doing, learn more, and I really want to serve on your board, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
To do that. But I found out right after we got him on the board, it just so happens he was running for city council. And after the campaign was over, we never heard from him again. So it was very clear that some people will use that. Some people were like, hey, I need a higher profile. I need to show that I'm doing some sort of community work. The best board members are those who their heart belongs to the organization.
Yeah.
And the heart can't belong to the organization, an organization that they don't fully know and understand. So it's great if you can get people who have volunteered with you, who are willing to spend a day out there with you and do those kind of things and say, man, I'm on fire for what you guys do. And those are the people that love you, that are going to be donating to you, that are going to show up to the board meetings, that are going to come out to site if you need them. Those are the board members that are so valuable. And I get others may not can do that, but I just wish they'd say, well, I'm just not willing to dedicate that time or not able to dedicate that time. So I'm not going to be able to serve. Yeah,
and I'm always a little cynical, and this is just coming up with age. But when I hear about someone being on 4 or 5 different boards, I'm like, how do you find time? How do you keep it separated? But I'm sure there are people that are on 4 or 5 boards and do a great job. Mission minded here, keeping your mind, your mission on your mind. It airs every single week, and of course, starting next week, we'll have it airing 5 days a week. Go to info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. You can leave your emails. We get emails every single week. Tim in Steubenville, Ohio. Says he knows all about can drives, non-perishable goods, but he wanted to know what percentage of the Montgomery Food Bank is perishable and how far out do you have to plan when you're talking about perishable foods?
Yeah, so one of the neat things that Feeding America and works with the USDA and gives dates that we give out to our agencies. So for example, we know that all food has a perishable date on it, or it's not a perishable date, it's a sell-by date.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Walmart, they may have 20 cases of green beans and its date is up and they know they're not going to be selling it in the store. So the government regulations and IRS regulations make that to where they can donate, a local store could donate that to the food bank, and then they get a tax write-off for that. But it enables us to then distribute that. And so we have a catalog that governs all that, and it doesn't come from what we like. I mean, this comes from the USDA and safety standards and all, and they may say, yeah, the sell-by date's here, but it's good for 12 months past. It's safe to eat for 12 months past the sell-by date. Mm-hmm. So then we manage that inventory and get it out in time. And so that's typically how all those goes. We have a catalog that governs all that, but doesn't come from just what we wish. It's all been tested and certified by the USDA and other government agencies to kind of guide us as to when food has to be absolutely, hey, it's too far past the date, we have to destroy it or get it into the hands of those who need it.
Barb writes, and she's from Hueytown. She said, when it comes to food banks, are there seasons? Are there seasons where you need more food than other seasons?
Well, the food banks are kind of like, they already plan, the government already kind of plans in advance on some of that stuff, like to have turkeys and hams and things like that. Mm-hmm. Lots of times food banks, like we're putting in a new freezer. We already have three, I think. I'm still counting up everything we have. Maybe four. No, we have 4 freezers / coolers.
Yeah.
And but we're putting in a new freezer that's costing $1.6 million. And
wow.
The reason is because we need more. We can get a lot more frozen foods, but we don't have the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
And so that means you get a lot more meat. You can get a lot more things that are, that people can, that are good, stable foods for people. But then we run into the issue of how much capacity storage capacity do our agencies have? So, we can store stuff now in our freezers and stage it for orders and pickups and all that. But if somebody only has a refrigerator with a little bitty box freezer on top, like a normal home refrigerator, and they're trying to serve out of that, then what could they maybe get 2 or 3 turkeys? You know what I'm saying? So those are the challenges. So one of the things we're looking at is trying to build capacity all the way through the chain. So increase our capacity and then look to our main agencies and try to help them build capacities so that it just frees us up to do more food and different types of food in our ability to get this out to the community.
Info at TonyCurryRadio.net. This is Mission Minded here every single week right here on the TKR app, Tony Curry Radio. You can download that like the tens of thousands of folks have already done that. Of course, wherever you listen to your podcast, to search Tony Curry Radio, Mission Minded with Michael Coleman, and you can get it done. Tim asked a real general question. Do you ever run out of food? It's a great question because we think that there's just like, just an unlimited amount of blood. I always think blood banks are interesting, and I never hear anything about the blood bank until they need blood. And it's usually after a natural disaster. Next thing you know, they're like, hey, listen, we're out of blood. And I'm like, well, and I don't know how long the shelf life of blood is. And I do know somewhat how long the shelf life of food is. But what happens? Do you ever run out of food?
No, we don't ever run out of food completely, and that's good. We don't even come close to running out of food. All of that is managed. So I don't want to bore the audience, but I'll just give you a few, because one of the things I had to do was when I came into the Feeding America system and the food bank system is I had to understand both the funding channels that exist and the food distribution channels. I mean, above us, how it gets to us, and then how we distribute it out effectively. And so an example would be we get an annual sheet that tells, based on the number of people in our counties that we're looking over or have a responsibility for, the USDA will designate a certain amount of trucks to come on certain months, on certain days. So every day we know, like we get here on Monday, we know this week what's scheduled to come in from the USDA, and they may bring in, like I said, all canned goods, and then we get an 18-wheeler in. We offload it, add it to our inventory. And so that's ongoing. But that alone is not enough. There's a new program through the state where the state gets dollars that are paying farmers, and farmers are bringing their fresh produce to us. And I'm talking about huge, like 10,000 pounds of peaches and those kind of things for us. And then we distribute that out. That's a program. So we have different programs with different channels, and all that's organized when we come. Now, there is a time, there's really two kind of instances. One is we will get a grant. Publix does it, Costco does it. Like we just recently got a $25,000 grant from Costco. Mm-hmm. But the grant stipulates you can only buy your food at Costco. So we have to go purchase that food in volume from Costco. So there is local purchased food. But then Feeding America also has its own system that you can go in and basically bid on. It's a network of trucks that have food that say, okay, who's going to bid on this? And when you bid, you're not bidding with dollars. Based on your size, you get what's called shares. And so you go in, and the shares are free, but you just get a certain amount based on how many you have to feed. Yeah. And so you then bid a certain amount of shares on trucks. And so you have to pay the freight, but then you get another truckload of food. I mean, so there's just several different channels in the system to get food. And then we also have store donations that we have somebody dedicated 3 days a week to go to all the Walmart stores and pick up everything they have. And then we there's Dollar General, there's Targets, there's Big Lots, there's all the stores that have excess, Aldi, all the grocery store, Publix, that they have arrangements to give that food and put it in our distribution channel.
So what kind of this is really interesting, because when you talk about the Costco grant, that's great. You get a grant from Costco, but you have to spend the money there. They're obviously making out on that, right? Because if they have a surplus of something and they need to get rid of it, it's like giving you a gift card, but they get to write some of that off for tax purposes. Am I correct there? Yeah, that's how it works?
Yeah, so that's the one good thing. And I know people, look, I'll be the first to say, we know how much, if you look head to toe in the government, we know that there's a lot of waste. And I used to be against programs like this because I just, there's so much waste in the system. Well, it's hard to make government efficient, but so I can only speak to this process. And I'm going to tell you, the amount of food that we get in and move and distribute out, and the fact that the government comes along and is supportive, it makes it easier for us to do that, because they make laws that allow the Walmarts to take the deductions, which encourages them to support to us. And then we take that, and like I said, we're down to the person. We use agencies to distribute the food, but our customers are the people in the rural areas or the urban areas who just are not, who are battling poverty and are just don't have the resources they need sometimes to make ends meet. And we're trying to get it out in these communities, and sometimes very remote places, trying to make sure everybody's covered. And without big companies like Walmart and Publix and your Costco's and things, your Sam's, we just simply couldn't do that. What the government provides is really nice, but it's just not enough in and of itself.
So are there, this is kind of a crazy question, but are there distribution centers or distributors or farmers that specifically grow food just for Feeding America?
No, not that I'm aware of, but that doesn't mean it's not. So I will give you an example. Recently, we got the 10,000 pounds. It was 10 pallets, and the pallets were taller than I was, of peaches from Chilton County.
Yeah.
And those of you who don't know, Durbin Farms right there in Chilton County is right there on the interstate, and it's known for growing, Durbin Farms particularly known for growing peaches and strawberries. And so what Alabama did is a program all the way across the country. Alabama got $5.9 million. And what the program is for rural and disadvantaged farmers. So really focusing on it's really intended for minority farmers. Mm-hmm. But also, they say rural farmers. I'm like, well, I've never met a farmer who was rural.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what happens is, instead of that crop maybe not making it to market, or not making it to only people who could purchase that on their roadside stands and stuff like that, Durbin Farms contracted, and they paid Durbin Farms X amount of dollars for that. Now, we don't get involved in what that contract is or what the price was or anything else. It's predetermined. But they arranged then the transportation of all those peaches. And then we have since, obviously with something that's perishable like peaches, we want to distribute those very quickly and get those into the hands of community members. So, we have to move very quickly sometimes on these things. But the truth of the matter is, without these programs, we might have some bare shelves. And right now, we've been very blessed to be able to meet the demand of our community.
Michael Coleman joins us here, mission-minded every single week, and every time he answers a question, it gives me like 15 more questions. So I'm going to keep firing away at you here. Mission-minded, your mind, your mission, your mind. You hear it live right here on TKR, and of course, wherever you get your podcast. You were mentioning there's such a huge waste. We know that there's enough food in this country to feed everybody pretty comfortably, and it's just a matter of distributing, getting the food where it needs to go, and it just doesn't get there. And I remember working at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and my dad would always ask, how much chicken do you throw away every night? And I said, we really don't throw less than a rack, which is 2 head of chicken. And he's like, how do you know that? And I said, well, over the course of years of doing chicken, you know exactly how much chicken within a couple of buckets you're going to sell on a Sunday. And so, outside a rash of people coming in or a horrible weather event where no one can get to your store, for the most part, there's not a lot of waste there because you have to throw that stuff away. What based on, and I know you've only been at the Montgomery Food Bank now for a short period of time, but where is the biggest waste when it comes to food in this country?
Wow, that's probably around restaurants and our dinner tables. I will tell you, there is very little waste here. If we find something, so we have something called a mobile pantry, and an agency can order a mobile pantry, and we deliver, a semi-load, semi-truck. It's different than a regular order where you get, a million different ways of variety. Sometimes you'll get, more 5-pound bags of potatoes than you know what to do with. Mm-hmm. But you may only get, 8 things on that truck, but we get it out into the communities before it goes bad and while it's still healthy. I will tell you sometimes, and I see this a lot, is it's well-meaning regulations. So I just got off the phone a couple of days ago with a lady from WIC, and that's Women, Infants, and Children's Program. And for a long time, I know we've recently gone through a baby formula shortage, so it's kind of died back. But before that, if they issued out WIC formula, and so canned formula already pre-mixed, well, let's say that the baby was allergic to it or wouldn't eat it or whatever, and they turn all that back in, and then they can go buy something else. Well, they will have cases and cases and cases of good formula that got turned back in, but they were prevented from distributing that back out. So they had to go through the channels to be able to do that. And then they finally got permission to be able to reissue that, but they can't reissue it out to their people. But they can reissue it out to the food banks. But then that's one area we cannot go past the use by date.
Yeah.
So we have to do that very quickly. But I have agencies that are starving for baby stuff.
Yeah.
Formula food, cereal, just all that kind of stuff. So we are trying to police up and say, we don't want one thing to go in the garbage can. Get it to us. We have the capacity, the refrigerated trucks to get it to the communities. And that's one thing that we're very sensitive about, is making sure that everything that's intended to get to the communities does effectively and efficiently. So there's almost the only thing that we struggle with at times would be if we get too much produce in, because produce can come in and already be right there on the edge. We'd like to be able to get the bananas in when they're green. Sometimes we get them in when they're yellow, and we're trying to turn them around and get them back out.
Yeah.
But outside of that, these guys here, and I think at all food banks, really just do a remarkable job of getting food in, getting it in the inventory, and turn around and getting it right back in the hands of the clients.
There's a lot of things, a lot of wheels that have to be spoken together, man, to make that all happen. It's an amazing thing you're doing down there. Michael Coleman, mission-minded as always, Mike. Thank you so much. And please keep those email questions coming. Any email question, we'll read right here, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, and starting next week, mission-minded on 5 days a week. Michael, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate you.
Enjoyed it as always.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.